Theron Ramacharaka, and I want to make a few notes here, additional notes here with respect to preparation for things to come here very soon now in this channel, on this playlist. In part 2 of Personal Evolution, my playlist called Personal Evolution Part 2, Mental Status Quo and Action Preparation, I asked you to do some preparatory exercises. And that involved part of that preparation exercise. One of those exercises was to just start thinking about what you want to get out of personal evolution training and mental discipline training. And that is going to come in handy here very soon because we're going to really extrapolate from that. I want to make an extra note. I want you to consider what your goals might be. Okay, what you expect to get out of it, what you want to get out of it, what you want to get out of, let's say, bear in mind here, personal evolution. Let's forgive the word training for a moment, okay? Let's consider that you are putting yourself through, whether you're following what somebody else says to do, or suggestions that they make, or you're putting this together for yourself. Okay. Let's say you're putting yourself through a systematic program of personal development in personal evolution, establishment of true selfhood, taking steps toward evolving yourself up through, let's say, moving toward no longer reincarnating in this plane, for example. That included here too. And mind training. Okay. Let's say that you're putting yourself through a program of that. What are your goals? What do you want to get out of it? What do you expect to get out of it? What do you know will come of it? All right. In order to answer those questions, I want you to consider all aspects of your life and everything that you know to this point about war on consciousness, world events, and so on. And I want you to consider also that motives root in desire. Motives are a necessary condition for interest, which is a necessary condition for attention. Grounding all of your work in any of this whole training program that you're putting yourself through, okay, also depends on your motives. I mean, the nature of the results are going to depend on your motives. And one of the things that, another thing is that is true is that all of our activity in life, the nature of our activity and the results of it depends on our motives. So if we're engaging in training that evolves our standards, the effects of our achievement and our personal evolution, well, it's going to ground our life, everything we do in our life, in our motives, especially if we do something as brazen as engrave our motives, intentionally engrave our motives right onto our will, such that everything we do as a willful act is grounded in those motives. So if we realize also that our motives, actually a necessary condition for our motives is desire. So our motives ground in our desire. So if we were to establish what our motives are and what our goals are, motives and goals being very similar, okay, the big difference being that motives have an emotional element to them that drives us to action. So if we build that emotional element that drives us to action into our goals, then we're all the more likely to do what it takes, to have the interest as well as the will to act oriented with respect to those goals. Okay. So if we were to set out what our motivating goals are, let's say, which you're going to do here, and you will engrave them upon your will, and then increasingly uh, act in accordance, act accordingly. So we would want to ground those motives, those motivating goals, in our very highest form of desires. Not being desires, ultimately, I mean, yes, our desires will have to do with everyday life. Some of them, our goals will have to do with everyday life, but these motivating goals, we should be able to ground in our highest standard of desire possible. In fact, ones that don't keep us tied to the lower planes of activity at all. Even though, yes, our goals, many of them will have to do with lower plane activity, everyday life. Yes, but we must be able to actually trace the line of desire back to the highest ones. And ultimately, the one of the highest desires, higher plane level desires that we have within us, if we're working on this going in this direction here with everything, would be to simply perform all of our actions out of the sake of duty to universal law, letting the results up to universal law, up to the law of evolution, to the law of evolution aspect of universal law, right? Just letting the results up to that, and we just do our actions not in connection with the results of our actions, but act in accordance with universal law, which always pushes toward evolution of all things, one way or another, either by redirecting things or by just directing things. When it comes to humanity, in fact, where we do make our choices and so forth, and we can either work in harmony with the aspects of universal law or not, we either end up with results that redirect us or just continue to direct us. But anyway, if we have as one of our core desires or motives, let's say, motives grounded in a desire to just act out of in accordance with universal law as just our duty to do so, with no real attachment to the results of our actions. Okay? See, that's something to consider here with respect to what's really at the core of your motives for engaging in personal involvement. So in answering your questions, what do you want to get out of this? What do you expect to get out of it? What will you hope will come out of it? What do you know will come out of it? Think along these lines, okay? If you're jotting down notes with respect to answering these questions, excuse me, I need a drink. Then maybe pencil something in along these regards. Don't have to make it formal right now at all. We're going to go through a whole purification process of your motives and goals. But for now, I just want you to think about it more and maybe make some notes. Also consider that we do have some core desires, and everybody does, actually, whether or not they know it. All of our desires really do root. I mean, if we have any awareness of true self at all within us, any at all, I mean, then we do have some core desires, and they are a desire for existence. These may actually be, in one manner, considered to be desires that the cosmic self has, let's say, but that's kind of anthropomorphizing the whole idea of cosmic self. But these are so close. These desires are right down at the interface of our individual true self and cosmic self, which are really just the same kind of stuff. It's just the difference in degree. We'll be learning more about that here. But right down there where that connection is where these desires root, these core desires. A desire for existence. Another one is a desire for consciousness and feeling, awareness. Another one is love at its purest form. That would be an emotional aspect of just core desire. Desire stuff, the basic core desire. Right? That would be the emotional aspect of it. Another one is experience of joy. Another one is expression. Just expression. Expression itself. Self-knowledge. True self-knowledge is another. That's kind of like these can be seen as being just different aspects of just core cosmic desire. Higher plane, the highest spiritually rooted desire. Okay, just different aspects of the same thing, really. Existence, consciousness, expression, self-knowledge, and contentment. So bear these in mind. When you think about what it is you're really after, think of those. Now they are a bit amorphous. They're not quite tangible, let's say. Not as tangible as some more precise statements that you can make, but they are clear and precise things. They are, but they're very general. So I just want you to think along these lines here. Kind of see your goals or what you expect to get out of this, what you hope to get out of it, what you know will come of it. If anything, you're pretty solidly sure about it. Just see if you can link these things to our notions of our core, really our true self core desires. A desire to just have increased existence, increased consciousness, increased awareness, increased love, and evolution toward those things, self-knowledge, joy, contentment, okay? Think along those lines in order to answer these questions. Now, also be aware in answering these questions for yourself or starting to generate some thought along these lines, be aware of things that are going on in the world, the war on consciousness, okay? War on consciousness. Be aware of the fact that we have the HARP program, which if you've been looking at things in sequence here, in my playlists, part 1, 2, and 3, you're aware of the HARP program, the kinds of things it's doing, the chemtrails that are going on, right? The nano particulates that we're breathing, the effects of the vaccinations that are going on, and a more purely astral, psychic level of a war on consciousness hijacking, and also of the fact that you're probably also aware here, you've probably heard one way or another, that humanity itself is taking a little evolutionary step forward, a kind of a little leap, as well as is the planet. Okay? And that part, an aspect of the war on consciousness is very similar to, we might say, a war against our planet's evolution. Whereas, yes, humanity is taking an evolutionary step forward. That doesn't include everybody, of course. I mean, everybody, each individual to a different extent. But there are forces in motion here to also try to get control over which direction that evolution is taking. This is a war on consciousness kind of thing going on, right? Also, this geoengineering by way of chemtrails and HARP antenna array and so forth is trying, getting complete control over the weather to use as a weapon, for goodness sakes, for one thing, is an attempt to control or maybe redirect from its natural course the evolution of the planet. the same time, and we're integrally tied in with this planetary system. All right, so think in terms of these things too. When you're coming up with what your goals, with mind training, mental discipline, consciousness evolution, personal evolution, establishment of true selfhood, keep in mind these things too, these factors. What is it that you want to get out of it? For example, if you've heard anything about, in your life, if you've ever heard anything about, if you have enough control over your attention and use of will, and you have the right knowledge about how to go, take such steps, you can control, let's say, the functioning of your DNA. Mind over matter kind of thing. Then add that in here, because other forces are controlling it. You're probably quite aware of that by now, if you've been viewing things in sequence here. Well, you can play a role in that too. A conscious, willful role in it. If you're at this point here in the material in my channel, you are somebody who is evolving naturally right now anyway. Now, what we're up to here with personal evolution training is becoming more and more aware of how to participate in that actively. Make it happen, especially in the face of affairs that are trying to control it according to agendas that are not wholesome. All right, so bear these things in mind. I mean, really give some thought to this, because what we're going to do with these things that I'm just asking you to think about at this point are going to become very core to your work with this systematic evolution and achievement training that you're putting yourself through, as well as in the more general aspect of your whole life direction. So think about this all very carefully. And don't worry about refining it all at this point, because we're going to go through a rigorous program of doing so. And then engrave the whole thing into your will and put it deep into your subconscious functioning, and then reinforce and strengthen that and use it consciously every day, making it a habit to be a conscious and subconscious experience with everything we do as a way of being. So think about this carefully. This has to do with your entire evolution, okay? This is real stuff. This is real stuff. And if you have any belief in reincarnation, this will affect everything. I mean, not just how you'll go through this training, but your life, your entire direction. It's kind of crunch time in a very existential manner, at a very existential level of the meaning of the term. So I just wanted to add these notes in here so that later on you'll have already given this some thought. Okay, there we go.